G'day and welcome back to Wimbledon Channel. I'm going to show you a clip from class today, and I'm doing two things in it. First of all, I'm doing some formative assessment. I'm using a new app/website that I've found called Plickers, and I've found this to be really helpful for formative assessment. Basically, what you do is you give each student a printout QR code from the website. You download it from Plickers. This is free, and it has basically an A, B, C, D on it. And so students have their own, they're numbered. And basically, when I ask a question on the Plickers website, they put up their little QR code, whichever way they think is correct, upwards, and it reads the QR code and tells me instantly what answer that student has given and very quickly what the class has given. So I thought I'd film myself trialing this. I did it for this is the second time I've ever done it. And for the students' kind of identification, etc., I speed it up. But you can see that it is a really quick process, and it's great for finding out what the class thinks about situations. And so, like multiple choice. You don't have to use Plickers. I'm not being paid via Plickers or anything like that. I just thought I'd film it and see how it goes and watch it. And it seems as helpful as I thought it was in class time. I've also given you kind of what I did in class so that legal studies students can see one of the things that we talk about a lot in legal studies, which is law reform. Basically, what I did is the students in class looked at the 5 reasons, the 5 conditions that give rise to the need for law reform. So we're talking, I'm probably going to forget one now, new technology, changing values and morals in society, changing composition of society. We didn't look at international treaties for this one, because I deal with that separately in class, and failure of existing laws. So we're kind of looking at they were given 4 options, and then I just gave them a bunch of scenarios, and they had to think which one is the condition that most suits that. And it was quite helpful for a discussion, for example, the difference between changing values of society over the changing circumstances, which make a law not as applicable as it used to be. So have a quick watch. If you have any questions, put it down below. But I thought this is a really kind of maybe a helpful video for teachers to have a look at how you can use formative assessment to very quickly find out where your class is at, whether they've understood the conditions and how they interplay with different scenarios. Also using Plickers, as well as for students to have a look and to have a think through themselves. Do I understand what the conditions are and how they work in real world scenarios? So, as stipulated earlier, we've been looking at conditions that give rise to the need for law reform. So I've got here, I've kind of put your 5 that you did into 4. Is that what everyone has for their 5? Okay, everyone understands what we're doing? New law allows New South Wales Police to give cautions for citizens found with less than 25 grams of marijuana on their person. What do we think? What do we think? We have 3 people who need to look at this again. The correct answer, Aiden? A. New concepts of justice or changing values. Why? Okay, so society has over time changed their tolerance of marijuana as an illegal substance. More people are using it. The police have responded. The legal system has responded and said, we'll allow personal use of a certain amount. That is an example of the changing value of society. Okay, the society thinks that. Has everyone got that? Okay, alright, let's do the next one. ATO websites have included additional 35 languages to their popular tax help packages. Let's see what you guys think. 14 and 2, changing values, and you're basically saying, well, minorities need to be looked after, all right? And so that's a justice issue, the question of they should have that in their own language, but it's more changing composition of society. That the tax office, first of all, only needed X number of languages there, and we're becoming much more multicultural, which means the government, the legal system, has to respond. And you understand that we're not just talking crime here. Legal studies is not just crime. That is an issue that we talk about in legal studies. How well does the government provide services for people? Access to the law, and often it's language services. Or, for example, during the bushfires. So if you jump on Wimbledon Channel, you see me talking about a a thing where there's a young woman from, I can't remember where she was from, it's a while ago now, overseas, who was basically interpreting and sending out radio messages about the bushfires in her own language, because she knew her community did not, most of them didn't read particularly well, and the government had not provided an audio response. She knew that her language, her culture, they didn't read very much, so these pamphlets that have been at great cost by the Australian government, produced and interpreted in that language, weren't as helpful as a radio service. So there's an idea of kind of the legal issues that we can be talking about. Alright, let's have a look at the next one. It is an offence to be in possession of 50 plus kilos of potatoes in West Australia. It is an offence to be in possession of 50 plus kilos of potatoes in West Australia. Much more interesting. So, changing composition of society 2, new concepts of justice or changing values 7, failure of existing laws 8. So the majority have it. But this is my opinion. I'd say it's a failure of an existing law. Why? Why? What were people's thinking? So you could talk about that concept. If the law is not being enforced, surely it's just a failure of that law. Why did the 7 of you put new concept of justice or changing values? Remember, if you're saying that, you need to explain how, in the past, somehow that was wrong. But, so what you're saying though, is that that's a change of justice or values to society. Whereas hoarding was seen as wrong back then and is still seen as wrong now. So the circumstances have changed, which make it a failure of existing laws, because the circumstances have changed, not the values of society. We still think hoarding's wrong. Yeah? Does that make sense? So the actual law, from memory, the actual law is if you are not a signed up member of like the Potatoes Association. So it's basically a way of ensuring that you are selling potatoes in the right kind of way. Alright, so the circumstances have changed. Because 50 kilos might have been a fair amount when the law came back. It's not, you can go to Costco, can't you? You can easily buy 50 kilos of potato probably which costs about $8. Alright, so this concept of that amount, which used to be a merchantable quality, a sellable quality, is now like, people are like, farmers, you can have a great crop if you've got a little hobby farm somewhere, and get 50 kilos of potatoes. You pull it out of the ground, the cops pull up, and you're like, go to jail. Oh, that's like 49.7. So does everyone get why that's failure of existing laws? Okay? Circumstances have changed to make the law different, as opposed to society thinks justice or values or morals have changed around a thing where circumstances are still similar. So obviously what happens? Shannon's asked a good question, like what happens if you got like Macca's and stuff? Macca's get a delivery and the cops pull around to check on it. What happens? What do you think happens in Western Australia, the fact that this law exists? What happens? It's ignored. Nothing happens. It's ignored. Police don't start and they're like, okay, we've got this weird law here that you really need to crack down on. Most of Western Australian police don't have no idea that it exists. Alright? Okay, so how do we go? Overall, very happy with that, okay? Are we happy with the concept? Are we understanding why law needs to change, why reform needs to occur? Sometimes it's circumstances. Sometimes it's values and morals changing. Sometimes it's the composition of society changing. You'll know, if you're a relatively perceptive person, that's going to happen all the time, isn't it? Society is always changing. The makeup of society is changing. We're either getting older as a populace, or technology is changing at a rapid rate. And so the next two things we're going to look at are how do we ensure that we don't stupidly change the law? That we don't make a knee-jerk reaction and go, potatoes, so therefore, and we just quickly change the law, and now it's wrong for another reason. Okay, so two ways of doing that: the agencies of reform and the mechanisms of reform. what are the actual bodies that help us with law reform? Okay, and what are the processes that need to occur? And that's what we're going to be looking at. All right, we happy with that? Everyone good?